We've been watching a congressional hearing erupt into shouting matches. Attorney General Pam Bondi has been defiant and explosive as she fields questions from members of the House Judiciary Committee, and it's happening on multiple fronts and multiple controversies, including the Justice Department's release of the Jeffrey Epstein files.
We've been watching a congressional hearing erupt into shouting matches. Attorney General Pam Bondi has been defiant and explosive as she fields questions from members of the House Judiciary Committee. And it's happening on multiple fronts and multiple controversies, including the Justice Department's release of the Jeffrey Epstein files. First, just watch this exchange with Democratic Congresswoman Judicial. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has. Members get to ask the questions. The witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer that.
It's about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions, the witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer it.
Now Pam really made waves when she went on national television and made a big statement. She didn't hold back. She called out a federal judge by name, labeled him biased, and claimed that he should be taken off the Trump cases. Not only that, she said the entire judiciary is filled with liberal activists who are out to sabotage Donald Trump's agenda. For those in Trump's camp, this probably hits home. It sounds like someone is finally standing up against a system they think is rigged. It's pretty wild how things unfolded recently. So, while Pam Bondi was on Fox News making a big fuss about judges being nothing more than political hacks, she didn't realize that she was stepping right into a storm.
Paul asked Jeffrey Epstein survivors who are in the room to raise their hands if they haven't been able to meet with the Justice Department. Every one of them raised their hands. Now, Bondi did acknowledge in her opening statement the victims, and she said she's deeply sorry for what they've been through and that the FBI wants to hear from them.
Democrats in Congress were ready to pounce, questioning whether she was misusing the Justice Department to target Trump's opponents. It's honestly hard to believe she couldn't see that she was doing exactly what she was accusing the judges of, mixing politics with the law. Instead of winning support, she basically gave her critics a solid example of everything they've been saying, that Trump's team has little respect for judicial independence or the rule of law, willingly willing to dismantle any institution that stands in their way. And here's the kicker. The timing couldn't be more ironic. Bondi was already under fire for how she handled the Epstein files.
But you are in charge. You have the power to change things, to hold these men accountable, and you're doing the opposite. You're protecting them. So I want to move on to another man.
Can I answer
Donald
that,
Trump.
though?
I want to move on to another
Can I answer your question about protecting?
You answered the question.
You're saying no. I love this.
I want to discuss another man, Donald Trump, who is all over the Epstein files.
Her attacks on Trump critics like John Bolton and Letitia James, and for supposedly turning the Justice Department into a shield for Trump and his political buddies. So, when she decided to slam federal judges, it didn't come off like some brave stand. It felt more like a confirmation that she'll go after anyone who doesn't just fall in line behind Trump. Now, I get it. If you support Trump, you might think the judges are all biased, and you probably believe the courts have been set against him from the get-go. In a different scenario, there's a way Bondi's criticism could strike a chord. If she had solid evidence of judicial misconduct or a history of rulings that blatantly broke the law.
I don't believe you asked Merrick Garland these questions when he was Attorney General and set before.
I agree with you.
You twice.
I'm reclaiming my time. I agree with you. I agree with you. During the Biden administration, I called for people looking at Epstein files. Merrick Garland dropped the ball, as did Attorney General Bill Barr, as did Alex Acosta, a whole string of failures, but you are in charge.
Her claims might have had some weight, but that's not the case here. Bondi is going after judges just because they ruled against Trump, labeling them as activists and calling for their removal with nothing to back it up except that they didn't agree with him. Meanwhile, her own Justice Department is facing some serious accusations of doing exactly what she's criticizing others for: playing favorites, weaponizing prosecutions, and targeting political foes while giving a pass to those in their corner. It's a messy situation, to say the least. So Pam Bondi's recent antics didn't just flop, They flopped in the most predictable way imaginable.
Here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was gonna stop a limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide.
And honestly, it feels like she walked right into a trap she set herself. You have to wonder if anyone in Trump's circle ever thought maybe it's not a great idea for the Attorney General to attack federal judges publicly, especially when we're already getting slammed for politicizing the Justice Department. It seems like a no-brainer, right? And this isn't some brilliant political strategy we're witnessing. It's more like stepping on a rake and getting slapped in the face with it. The worst part, she really wasn't subtle at all. Bondi went on Fox News and said that judges should be kicked out because they ruled against Trump.
I'm going to keep going on this. I'm not worried about someone who has been charged with a very serious crime. His alleged actions were a betrayal of public trust. So
that's not just pushing back against a biased system. It's essentially asking for the system to be rigged in your favor. In this video, I'm diving into exactly what Bondi said, why it blew up in her face so dramatically, and what this reveals about Trump's team and their entire approach to the courts and the Justice Department. It's not just about one bad interview. It points to a pattern that's been unfolding since Trump's first term and seems to be speeding up in his second. If you care about the rule of law or even just smart political strategy, this story is really important. So let's break down what actually happened because the details are crucial. On the 11th of February, 2026, Pam Bondi showed up to the House Judiciary Committee where she thought she was headed for a routine oversight hearing. Instead, it turned into a full-on brawl with Democrats grilling her about everything from the Epstein files to how she handled cases involving Trump's political rivals. Bondi, in response, launched into accusations that the judiciary was part of an organized resistance against Trump. Now, that term organized judicial resistance isn't typical for an attorney general. That's not how you speak about the third branch of government with any respect for the independence of the courts. That's how you talk about judges you see as political opponents who need to be taken down. But she didn't just stop there. When she got on Fox News, things got even crazier as she named specific judges like Barl Howell and James Buberg. And she didn't hold back in criticizing their rulings. She stated they needed to be removed. The sitting Attorney General of the United States managed to go on national television and claim that federal judges should be removed for ruling against Donald Trump. It's pretty astonishing, really. Her argument isn't that the judges broke any laws or violated judicial ethics. No, in Pam Bondi's mind, they can't be impartial simply because they disagreed with Trump. That's her entire stance. They ruled the wrong way, so they're biased, and therefore they need to go. It's honestly hard to believe she said that out loud. This kind of talk is exactly what you'd expect from a leader in a country where the executive branch doesn't respect the separation of powers. It sounds like the language of authoritarian regimes desperate to eliminate judges who won't back their decisions. And here's the kicker. Bondi made these statements while facing accusations herself of wielding the Justice Department to target Trump's critics. Now let's unpack that a bit because this is where everything falls apart. While she's ranting about political judges, her own Department of Justice is under investigation for being political, too. Democrats in Congress are all over her for going after folks like John Bolton, Trump's former national security advisor, who has turned into a loud critic. They've been pushing her for explanations about why the DOJ is pursuing Letitia James, the New York Attorney General who's been prosecuting Trump's business dealings. They're also demanding to know why the Epstein files, which could expose powerful players, seem to be handled in a way that protects Trump's allies while exposing his adversaries. And here's the thing, these aren't just random claims. There's a clear pattern. Under Bondi's leadership, the DOJ has taken action against Trump's critics while downplaying or dragging out cases that could negatively affect him and amplifying prosecutions of people Trump has publicly called out online. When Democrats bring this to light, Bondi's go-to response is simply, yeah, but the judges are biased. It's pure deflection. She's trying to shift focus from her own politicization of justice by accusing the courts of doing the same. And you know what's wild? It's just not working at all because voters aren't falling for it. Swing voters especially can see right through this. They know what's going on. It's pretty surprising to see Pam Bondi going after judges who ruled against Trump, all while using the Department of Justice to target Trump's opponents. It's clear this isn't about fairness or justice. It's about keeping Trump safe at any cost, even if it means messing with the independence of the judiciary. This situation is more than just how it looks on the surface. It points to a significant problem with trust in our institutions. When the Attorney General airs her thoughts on television, labeling federal judges as political hacks in need of removal, that definitely sends a troubling message. It implies that the courts are unreliable, that rulings are only valid if they go in your favor, and that judges are merely politicians wearing robes. Once that narrative takes hold, it paves the way for people to disregard court orders, defy rulings, and treat laws like they're optional. This isn't just some hypothetical scenario, either. We've witnessed Trump not complying with court orders. His supporters have gone as far as claiming certain judges have no jurisdiction over him. We've seen attempts to overturn verdicts and undermine prosecutions. Each time someone like Bondi publicly attacks the courts, it only strengthens the idea that the legal system has become just another battleground where winning is the only goal. Now, here's where things might ruffle some feathers among Trump supporters. This whole strategy really isn't effective in the long run. It might energize the base and get cheers at rallies. And sure, it plays well on Fox News, but it doesn't translate to victories in court. It doesn't alter the facts of the cases. And it certainly doesn't convince undecided voters that Trump is being treated unfairly. Instead, it gives the impression that Trump and his crew will do whatever it takes, including attacking anyone or dismantling any institution that stands in their way. Polling shows that independent voters, who are really the ones that tip elections, aren't buying into that rigged courts narrative. When they see Trump losing cases, they start to think maybe he actually did something wrong. They observe Bondi going after judges and might think maybe she's trying to intimidate the judiciary. And when they notice the DOJ pursuing Trump critics, the conclusion they draw is maybe this administration doesn't really respect the rule of law. So Bondi's appearances on Fox News, where she calls for judges to be held accountable, only reinforce these perceptions. Pam Bondi should really think twice about her recent comments because they're not doing Trump any favors. Instead of helping, she's just reinforcing the negative views that swing voters already have. By attacking the judiciary, she's basically saying that the Trump administration sees courts as hurdles rather than equal branches of government that deserve respect. This move just served up a perfect talking point for Democrats about authoritarianism undermining norms and the attacks on judicial independence. The craziest part, she didn't even have to go there. She could have focused on specific rulings she didn't agree with, filed appeals, or made her arguments in court rather than on cable news. But she chose the nuclear option, attacking judges by name, questioning their fairness, and demanding their removal. And now she's facing the fallout from that choice. Right after her appearance on Fox News, legal experts from all over, regardless of their political leanings, called her out for being out of line. Democrats in Congress jumped at the chance to initiate new oversight investigations. Even some conservatives, the ones who genuinely care about judicial independence, thought Bondi had overstepped. So instead of the conversation being about biased judges against Trump, it flipped to Trump's attorney general attacking the courts. That's pretty wild and honestly a textbook example of how not to handle a political issue. Responding to accusations of politicizing justice by doubling down on it is just not a smart move. Defending yourself against claims of undermining institutions while undermining those very institutions on live TV and attacking federal judges by name while already under investigation for weaponizing the DOJ. That's exactly what Bondi did. And now she's in a much worse place than before. Instead of the dialogue being about whether judges are biased, it's shifted to whether the Attorney General even respects the separation of powers. That's a much trickier situation for Trump's team to come out on top. Now, let's unpack the bigger picture here because this isn't just one bad interview. This fits into a long-standing pattern. Trump has been targeting judges since his first term. Remember how he called a judge a so-called judge when he didn't like a ruling on the travel ban? Or when he went after the judge in the Trump University case, claiming he couldn't be impartial due to his Mexican heritage. This isn't new at all. What's changed is that now Trump has taken it to another level. So, here's the situation with Pam Bondi, the Attorney General. She's not just any random face. She's in charge of the Justice Department, supposed to uphold the law, respect the courts, and ensure that any prosecutions are grounded in solid evidence rather than political games. But instead, we see her on national television calling for judges to be ousted simply because they didn't rule in favor of her boss. That's definitely not how it should work. Then there's the sheer hypocrisy of it all. Bondi complains about judges being political while she's out there politicizing the Department of Justice herself. She focuses on going after Trump's critics while shielding his allies, using the federal prosecution power like it's a tool for personal vendettas. And when she gets called out, her excuse is, "But the judges are worse." That's hardly a solid defense. It's more of an acknowledgement that something's off. We really need to remember that judges are meant to be independent. Their job is to make decisions based on the law, not based on presidential whims or who appointed them. Sometimes that means they'll make decisions that the president doesn't like. And that's exactly how it should be. A strong judiciary acts as a check on executive power, ensuring that there's a no when the executive branch oversteps. If Bondi's reaction to judges ruling against her boss is to say they should be removed, then the balance that keeps our system in check is basically gone. And what does this mean for Trump and his legal troubles? Well, he's in hot water with both criminal and civil cases that could lead to serious consequences. Every time Bondi attacks these judges, it just feeds into the notion that Trump knows he's got something to hide and is trying to undermine the courts before they can hold him accountable. It's clear damage control, and it's about as subtle as a brick. Looking ahead, this saga isn't done yet. Bondi will be facing more scrutiny, and you can bet the Democrats are going to keep pressing for answers. Every time she goes after a judge or targets someone who criticizes Trump, it gets tougher for her to argue that she's just doing her job. I mean, when you really step back and look at the big picture, it raises some serious questions about our justice system. Are we aiming for a place where the law applies equally to everyone? Or are we heading toward a system where the powerful use the law as a weapon against their rivals? Right now, it feels like under Bondi's leadership, the Department of Justice is leaning toward the latter. And that's pretty alarming for everyone, regardless of your feelings about Trump. Here's the kicker. If you're okay with the DOJ targeting Trump's critics, just wait until the next administration comes in and does the same to people you support. If you think it's fine for the Attorney General to lash out at judges who don't rule in favor of her boss, just imagine how that'll look when a Democratic Attorney General decides to play the same game. Once you get used to this kind of behavior, once you accept using justice as a political weapon, there's no going back. It becomes routine, and in the end, we all lose. Bondi's latest attack backfired, but it did more than just show bad political strategy. It opened the door to something much scarier, an administration that sees the courts as enemies instead of equal branches of government. It paints a picture of a Justice Department being used for political revenge instead of defending the rule of law. If this trend keeps going unchecked, it could totally change how justice operates in our country. And let's be clear, that kind of approach isn't sustainable. You can't run a functioning democracy when the executive branch is constantly at odds with the judiciary. Maintaining the rule of law becomes impossible when the Attorney General is demanding judges be fired for decisions they don't like. It's hard to convince voters that you respect institutions while you're actively trying to undermine them. Sure, Bondi tried to frame it as a battle against biased judges, but what she really showcased was that the genuine bias and politicization and the biggest threat to judicial independence come from her own department. That's a story worth telling. Pam Bondi seems to think that the courts are biased against Trump, which honestly feels like a bit of a distraction from her own actions with the Department of Justice.